Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a top 25 list. Actually, this is an unranked list, but this list is the type of video that I normally stay away from. This is for more the influencer type channels and stuff like that. But I had a subscriber request this, and I thought, you know what? I try to do what I can when somebody in the subscriber pool requests something. And I've had a lot of people lately say you should be doing these type of videos because your videos are different from these quote unquote influencer people who put these videos out. And I thought, you know what, that's a fair statement. And I do them different. I do the videos my own way. And after reviewing all 4 desert gems back to back to back to back in a row, now I've sat with them for years. It's not like I just sprayed them on once and did a review. I've sat with them for years. I know the fragrances very well, but I've been doing a lot of individual reviews lately, and you will see a lot of that on this channel. I feel like doing individual reviews is a little bit of a lost art. Like, it's easy to just do lists and show fragrances and, you know, all that stuff for the camera, but it's much harder to break down a proper fragrance. It's becoming really, it's going the way of the dodo. Okay, not Dodo the zoologist fragrance either, but the way of the dodo. It's becoming extinct. And so I thought that it would just be a good idea to do a lot of individual reviews and get in depth. And I understand those individual reviews probably get less than half of the views of some of these big list videos, but this will be a big one. I'm sure a lot of people will like this type of video. So top 25 most powerful fragrances in my collection. Most powerful. Now, a couple things I have to mention. I wanted to start with niche because I just finished reviewing all the desert gems, okay? And these are fragrances that I have bottles in my collection, so there very well may have been some fragrances I reviewed, Nichanes or stuff like that off of a sample that maybe could have been in this list, but this is sort of, you know, bottle-worthy fragrances, let's say, okay? That's number one. Number two, this is an unranked list, all right? So number one is not any higher ranked than number 25 in this list. This is just 25 fragrances, a fun way to talk about a lot of fragrances. And number three, I decided to focus on niche. And one of the reasons is a couple things. I was actually talking with my brother Spice, who came on the channel on a live stream. We did a beautiful live stream together. You can check it out. If you go through my live streams, you'll see Spice Island. And he's trying to get himself back on his feet after the horrible Maui fires. And he will get back on his feet. I'm excited to smell his new fragrance. Anyways, but we were just chatting, and he said, Ramsey, he brought up a fantastic point. He said, Ramsey, nowadays, you know, when you compare it to back in the day, the drugstore fragrances from back in the day, even something like a drugstore fragrance from 1965, used mostly naturals with just a little bit of synthetics here and there. They used real Mysore sandalwood. Even in drugstore fragrances, crazy to think of nowadays when you're paying $300 for synthetic crap. But back in the day, you got just amazing value, even on the lowest branch, even on the lowest level, the drugstore fragrances, right? Now it seems like even on what people think are the higher levels, sometimes you get this bait and switch. And the difference nowadays is a lot of synthetics with the tiniest amount of naturals because the houses want to save as much as possible, unless you go to the artisanal houses, and that's a totally different debate, okay? So I'm starting with niche because probably most of the most powerful fragrances, and this is subjective, obviously. Powerful is a subjective term. Somebody recently told me fragrances just evaporate on their skin. They literally eat fragrances. So some people say, I get 15 hours in this fragrance. This other person says I only get 6 or 7 because my skin eats the fragrance. So obviously this is a subjective list, but one thing that cannot be disputed is the rise of these big ambery woody molecules, which amber woods, there's an entire article or 10 you could probably read just by a very simple Google search, but they have invaded perfume, mostly because they are very powerful and they're very cheap to make, okay? And those two ingredients make some of these bigger conglomerate Borg type houses, you know, like the squid taking over everything. And their eyes light up with dollar signs when they see the price to quality to price ratio of what they're putting in, and the response from the public is generally good, is the other thing, right? People tend to like these big fragrances. Now, I decided to break it up into niche because I think you almost have to separate what was done in the past. Yes, vintage fragrances had what was called the powerhouse era, okay? There were powerhouse type fragrances from back in the day. You think about things like Lapidus Pour Homme. That's an example of a powerhouse fragrance, I would say. Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme, a powerhouse fragrance. But those fragrances, never in my life have I ever sprayed Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme on my shirt or on my neck, and some got on my shirt, and I could smell it a month later. Never, ever, okay? Never, ever. With some of these fragrances we're going to talk about today, if it so much as touches an article of clothing, you will smell it months later, even if you wash your clothes. Even if it goes into the washer, you put the soap in, it comes out, you can still smell it on your clothes. That's how powerful some of these materials are, okay? So that's the idea of this video. 25 fragrances in my collection, which I have bottles of, no decants here, that I would consider to be the most powerful niche fragrances in my collection. Okay, go. So, number one, and we're not going to do scent of the day because my scent of the day is actually in this list. I'm kind of getting ready for an individual review, so I've been wearing it, but I feel like I need some more time with it. So it's in the list. I'll mention it when we get there, and it will be pretty soon. But we're going to start with the house of Frederic Malle, since I just did these desert gems. Frederic Malle is one of my favorite niche houses. I'm very sad to see Frederic Malle stepping down. I hope it's not for health reasons, and I hope everything's okay with him and his family. But he created some of what I would consider to be the all-time greatest niche fragrances, and he created some of the strongest niche fragrances I've ever smelled in my life, the most powerful. So number one on this list is going to be his very first fragrance from the Estee Lauder buyout. So once Estee Lauder purchased Frederic Malle, this was the very first fragrance that he released after that buyout, which was huge news in the fragrance industry. And this is called Monsier. Not just Monsier, but Monsier, period. The end-all, be-all for all Monsier fragrances. Now, I could have included other patchouli fragrances that are huge. For example, I could have included Javoy's Psychedelic. I probably should have included a Javoy, but this is kind of one of my heavy patchouli examples because this is 50% patchouli, according to Parfumum. Rumor has it, it's 50% patchouli. The fragrance should contain an unusually high concentration of patchouli, 50% is what it says. This is a huge, gigantic fragrance. It's giant. It is monstrous, throwback, old school, scratchy patchouli with this suede-like accord, this boozy mandarin orange in the top, smoky frankincense, a little bit of saffron to make it slightly modern. Bruno Jovanovic is the perfumer. What a fragrance this is. I love this stuff. It's one of my favorite patchouli fragrances of modern times anyways. So we're going to do a vintage, powerful fragrance video list, and that will include the ones you're probably expecting, like the Antaises and the Givenchy Gentlemen's from 1974. That will be on the vintage version of this list. But Monsier, one of the big patchoulis on this list at number one. Number two is Promise by the same house, Frederic Malle. Now we're in 2017, and again, I just reviewed the Desert Gems on the channel, so you can go watch a whole review of me really going into deep detail with this. But this is almost like a reference Cypriol fragrance for me. Cypriol is an earthy, I called it in the review, the Arabic version of patchouli. Okay, I can say that, I'm Arabic. So this is this big, sour, crunchy green apple with a ton of ambroxan. This is maybe one of the biggest. Like if I was ranking this on size, this and the next one may be two of the biggest fragrances in my collection. Promise is absolutely immense. It's like you can step into the fragrance. It's so huge. It's like you're inside this 3D bubble of a fragrance. Everywhere you go, everyone will smell you. And if you're brave enough to wear this in the heat like me, forget about it. I mean, you'll rip paint off the walls. It's a fantastic fragrance. So if you like old school fragrances like I do, you cannot go wrong with Promise. Okay, next on the list, we have the final Frederic Malle. I tried to keep it 3 or 4 per house, let's say. So number 3 on the list, we have the final Desert Gem, the newest one out as of right now, which came out in 2019. I reviewed it yesterday on the channel. This is Julian Raskinet's The Moon. Now, The Moon, man, I'll tell you what, when I wore this yesterday, though, I have to tell you, I know I've been saying Promise is my favorite. Promise is my favorite Frederic Malle, but The Moon very well may have just dethroned Promise after wearing it yesterday. I loved every single second of The Moon. I love that weird bubblegum, sort of raspberry, fruity, fermented, lychee thing that gives off that strange, like, rose milk. If you go to an Indian restaurant and ask for rose milk, you'll get that with this red currant. It has very, the idea was that in Arabic, when you say my moon, right? You're basically calling someone like your baby or your love, your life, if you will. And so when you think about like a heart of somebody's heart, think about like a Valentine's Day heart, pink in color or red in color, or think of a blood moon is the way I described this on the review. And that'll get you in the ballpark with this leathery type dry down, a little bit of cumin in the top. The cumin is brownish color, spicy. It doesn't have that sweaty aspect to me, but it does give a little bit of an animalic touch with the oud, but the oud doesn't have the traditional skank. It's not as skanky as the Night or Dawn, which I don't have full bottles of to be in this list. But I think the Moon may have just dethroned Promise as my favorite Frederic Malle. It is unbelievable. Julian Rasquinet is a hell of a perfumer. So the Moon, number 3 on the list. Number 4 is my scent of the day. And it actually is the fragrance that most gets compared, most gets compared to the Moon. And it came out in 2015. It's from the house of Histoires de Parfum. And this is called Rare. Well, it's from the, I keep calling it Rare Fidelis. Somebody correctly corrected me today. They said, Ramsey, it's not called Rare Fidelis. It's actually from the Rare line, the line of fragrances from this house. It's like the higher end line, which I reviewed a couple on the channel, like Veni and stuff like that. You can go check out my Histoires de Parfum playlist. For those of you new to the channel, if you're finding this channel through this video and you're not familiar with me or kind of the work that I've done, I've put up going on 1,000 videos, okay? And many of those videos are individual reviews. So if you are interested in a particular house like Frederic Malle, there's a whole Frederic Malle playlist where you can go see all my reviews. There's a Histoires de Parfum playlist where you can see some of the other reviews like Veni and stuff like that, okay? So, just as a mention for the newcomers to the channel, okay? There's an entire playlist for almost every single house that I do a review of. So you can go watch all the reviews if you would like. So, but Fidelis came out in 2015, and it shares differences with the Moon. I mean, I understand why the comparison is made because it's the same perfumer, Julian Rasquinet, and I think there are some similarities, but I think the Moon wipes the floor with Fidelis, personally, my opinion. I still like Fidelis. I enjoy the coffee aspect of it. And I really like the cardamom spice that's missing in the Moon. There's no cardamom in the Moon. If there is, there's only a little bit in Fidelis. It gets turned up a lot more. The cardamom is heavier. You still get that saffron, rose, raspberry combination. But the thing that bothers me, and I'll go into this when I finally get around to reviewing it, is in Fidelis, the base of Fidelis seems much cheaper. The base of the Moon, the way that the oud mixes with the leather in the Moon smells so much more expensive and posh to me. This is a huge fragrance. I mean, every single fragrance we've talked about so far is a 12 to 16 hour fragrance. I mean, I could smell the Moon today, the next day after wearing it yesterday at night. I could easily smell it throughout the day on my wrist, even after taking a shower. The Moon is immense. Same with Fidelis. Fidelis, I mean, I sprayed this 12, 13 hours ago, okay? And I can still smell the dry down of Fidelis. I will say I also don't care for the caramelly-like parts of Fidelis. It turns into a little bit of a gloopy caramel thing into the dry down on my skin. So I like it. It'll be a good review, but I just think if you have a choice, if you're someone out there going, do I get the Moon, do I get Fidelis? If you can put up the extra cash, I think the Moon is the better fragrance, but Fidelis is very good. So that's number 4. Number 5. Number 5 is a fragrance from the house of Rogue Perfumery, and it's a house I really rate, and it's a house I really feel like I need to start doing some reviews of, but this is his biggest fragrance by far, and one of the strongest fragrances in my collection. This stuff, I mean, God forbid this touches any clothing. You'll smell it forever. It's his version of a Middle Eastern Oriental. You notice a lot of these fragrances are Middle Eastern touches, or they have that oud accord, right? You're noticing a little bit of a trend here. And so this is called Derviche, and you can see almost like the crescent star with the crescent moon style. We talked about the crescent moon and the star going back to the Ottoman Empire when we did our the review of the moon yesterday. But Derviche is Manny Cross's take on maybe the largest saffron note I've ever smelled in my life. The saffron in here is immense. It just feels like this giant chemical explosion with civet, it's animalic, smoke from the frankincense, and this huge sort of jasmine, white jasmine. The white floral can sometimes give me a headache in this fragrance. Sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't, but it starts off extremely, extremely sweet, and it dries down to a beautiful tobacco and vanilla and a little bit of leather. It's very resinous in feeling, like the saffron is just dipped in resins, and it has that saffron adds this unbelievable depth. But this is a huge, huge fragrance. Derviche is gigantic, and you really have to be careful where you wear that, I think. So that is Derviche at number 5. Number 6 on the list. Number 6 is the one and only Bvlgari on the list, and it's from their higher end Le Gemme line. And again, it's a Middle Eastern style fragrance. And if I owned any of Jacques Cavalier's work for Louis Vuitton, there probably would be things like, I don't know, Nuit de Fa or something like that on there, right? But this one's called Falkar. So here's the packaging. My buddy, who I made some decants of his favorites, he's like, dude, the chicks love this one. This is like the feet. Look at this. It came apart. This is their high-end line? This is their high-end line? Bvlgari, you owe me a package, sir. Anyways, but this is how it looks. And comes with this little book no one reads. And here's the bottle, which looks cheap on the screen, but I can tell you it feels cheap in my hand, okay? You can see the cheap little plastic for you ASMR fans. But I do like the style. I like the little gem on top, the Le Gemme collection, and the magnetic. I could smell this from here while taking the cap off. It is huge. It's Bangladeshian oud, black musk, leather, and saffron. It smells like a Louis Vuitton. I mean, if you close your eyes, it really does. It smells like a Louis Vuitton. I've made him a couple 10 ml decants, and he keeps coming back and going, can I have another one? I'm going to have to tell him no after the next one, but I'll give him one more. But yes, it is a immense, huge, giant, woody, leathery Middle Eastern perfume done by Jacques Cavalier. If you've smelled some of his work with the Louis Vuitton line, you'll have an idea of what you're getting with Falkar. Okay, next on the list, we have the only Chanel on the list. And by the way, when we go to some of these other houses, which we're going to talk about, Chanel, Dior, stuff like that, it's only their high-end line. It's only the niche line. So with Tom Ford, it's the private blends. I'm not including the general line. I'll do a separate designer video for that, I think. But so this is from Chanel's Privé line. And this is called, which I didn't even grab it, I don't think. This is called, glad I had the bottle here. That would have been a disaster. This is called Le Lion. So there's a full review of Le Lion on the channel if you want to check it out. Le Lion is, oh my God, it's so good though. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best private blends for me. For somebody like me who likes big perfume, I mean, go watch my review, but Le Lion is, I think, the best labdanum fragrance in the game. I think I ranked it as my #1 labdanum perfume. Patchouli and sandalwood in the base, which some say will remind you of Coromandel. Maybe a slight reminder, but it reminds me more of Shalimar than anything else. It's like a labdanum heavy version of Shalimar done in the Chanel style with big aldehydes in the top. It's a beautiful fragrance. Really is fantastic. I absolutely adore Le Lion well, I guess we're not really keeping track, but at number 7. Number 8 is a fragrance from a house that makes very linear fragrances, but beautiful. The quality of the ingredients of this house have absolutely blown me away. And this was a gift from my friend Jeff. Jeff sent me this, and it was a very, very kind gift from him. I've had so many amazing people that I've come across in this journey so far, but this has absolutely blown me away. And if you know my love of a fragrance by Serge Lutens called Filin Agile, This is like Arso's version of Papillon Anubis, but I think this is even bigger. This is more powerful. Even though it maybe is not as complex, it's a little bit more linear, but it's so beautiful. And this is Arso by the house of Profumum, Roma. This house makes very, very strong fragrances. And when you spray, it almost feels like it's like oil on your skin. The fragrance almost wears like you're putting on an oil. You know, when you put it on, it's so thick, and it really lasts on your skin. You can see the quality. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Pine resins, cedar leaf, but it's the smoke and the leather, the frankincense and the leather, like walking in a pine forest with the smoke kind of in the background. It's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. I love Arso. A full review needs to happen soon. So many reviews, only one RAM. So that's Arso at number 8. Number 9, we're going to Amouage. There's going to be back-to-back-to-back Amouage. The most Amouages from actually any house. Amouage has the most on here. And of course, there's only so many niche houses, right, that I have full bottles of. The other thing is you could probably have 25 Amouage fragrances on this list. There are some giant Amouage fragrances. As far as the niche game goes and huge perfumery, Amouage was known as like the beast mode fragrance creators from when Christopher Chong was running things. And so the first one I'm going to show goes all the way back to the original Amouage from 1983. They did Gold Woman and they did Gold Man. I'm going to show the men's version. The women's version is equally nice, but I prefer the men's version just because of the history that I have with it. I would love a vintage bottle, but I love my magnetic cap bottle. I'm not going to lie. I think this is amazing stuff. It's extremely strong. It's a floral animalic that was created by Guy Robert, one of the greatest perfumers of all time. Guy Robert is usually spoken about up in the echelons of Edmund Rudnitska, and I mean, just the greatest of the great perfumers. Guy Robert is usually right up there. And he used to love a fragrance by the house of Lanvin called Arpège. And many of Guy Robert's fragrances throughout the years, things like Calèche from Hermès and Gold by Amouage, which I think this is his masterpiece, but almost like try to recreate Arpège over and over. And that's a beautiful, I've got an extrait of Arpège, like this beautiful aldehydic floral like you've ever smelled. This is like Middle Eastern ingredients, French perfumery style, if that makes sense. When Amouage brought him in, they brought him in because he is a fine French perfumer. They wanted fine French perfumery, okay? And so he did this in the classical French style. Lily of the Valley, it's very, very powdery. This is one of the most powdery fragrances in my collection. Beautiful Omani Cistus labdanum with Omani green frankincense, as they call it, jasmine, iris, myrrh, civet, oak moss, ambergris, cedarwood, Mysore sandalwood. They say Mysore, maybe in 1983. I doubt they're using real Mysore sandalwood now in 2024. It's probably an Accord, is my guess, but I don't know. If the brand says they're using real Mysore sandalwood, go with it. White musk and patchouli. And this is just decadence in a bottle. I mean, I could see, I could see a man that just commands the room wearing this. And there's a party element to it, but there's also a very serious element to it. And it's classical perfumery. If you know your classics, if you know your genres, right? If you know what a fougere is, what a chypre is, what an aldehydic floral is, what an oriental is, all that stuff, you will appreciate Gold Man. Gold Man is one of a kind. It's beautiful, and I really think Guy Robert created a masterpiece with that, and I will review that one of these days. Next on the list is another Amouage, this time from 2009, and by far the best perfume from this woman. Her name is Rhonda Hamami. I know she's done some other stuff, but she has done nothing like this, and I think it shows the brilliance of Christopher Chong. There is a full review on the channel of this. This is called Epic Man. So epic is epic. I mean, it's like the perfect spicy fragrance to me, because it has the smoke, it has the frankincense, it has the cumin, the spices, the cardamom, the mace, the nutmeg, the myrtle, the saffron, the spicy geranium, the resinous myrrh, and it dries down to this castoreum leather, which is just to die for. I've got a full review on the channel, but one of the key highlights of that review is I basically said, imagine you're sitting in the desert with your camels, you're on the Silk Road, because this is about the Silk Road, right? And of course the emerald color. And just imagine somebody takes spices and throws them into the fire, because it's cold in the desert at night, right? Throws them into the fire. And when he throws them into the fire, almost like a magic act happens, and they poof up into flames, and those flames, that smoke, that frankincense-like feel, turns green as it rises into the night sky. That's the feeling of Epic to me. It is, I mean, it's literally like looking at an emerald. It's the packaging, the color, everything is perfect. It's, go watch my review if you want an in-depth review. I would love a non-magnetic cap. I'd love a non-magnetic cap of every single Amouage that's available, but we cannot have non-magnetic caps of them all, but we can have them of this one, because I got very lucky thanks to a friend. This comes from Armando, and this is Interlude Man is the next one at number 11. And Interlude is known as the Blue Beast. It is literally on every single person's beast mode list, but in particular, I'm talking about the non-magnetic cap version, which is even stronger than the original. I have a magnetic cap. I have the non-magnetic cap. They now have Interlude 53 for those of you who are crazy enough to give Amouage double the money for something that smells very similar to me. I'll do a comparison video for the channel one of these days, but this is a 2012 release by Pierre Negrin, one of my favorite perfumers. Oregano, pimento, bergamot, frankincense, apopanax, amber, cistus, leather, oud, patchouli, sandalwood. It's literally like being in an opium tent to me. This is what I imagine the smell of incense burning, you know, in an enclosed area, right? Very, very smoky scent. Oh man, the resins, the amber, what a creation. I mean, this is Amouage to me. This is what Amouage should be doing, stuff like this. Very, very proud of Christopher Chong and Pierre Negrin to put out perfumery like this and just stay in their own lane, you know, while people are giving them shit and they're getting flack from all over. They just continued on the journey of creating great perfumes for Amouage. So that's why they have the most represented in this house, and they're made for beast mode scents. That is one of the biggest. I mean, that the non-magnetic cap version of that can last 24 hours. It can last literally an entire day, 24 hours from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next day if you don't take a shower. Okay, in 2021, there was a new fragrance that the Fishman did with Cecile Zarokian that I was actually really impressed by. If I had a bottle, Royal Tobacco easily could be on this list as well. That's a huge fragrance, but the one I ended up going for was Silver Oud. And Silver Oud from 2021 is also a big Cypriol. I mentioned Promise, but this is more done in a darker, smokier, leatherier version. Promise has more of that apple and the big ambroxan. This has Cypriol on the top, and it does give off a pretty respectable oud note in the top. It's like a Cypriol, patchouli, patchoulol creation, probably some vetiver and stuff like that in there. And there's an ambrarome note, which is a leathery ambergris note with hints of pepper, tar, tobacco, and coffee. The manufacturer apparently is Simrise. And this fragrance is a beast. I mean, this is an example of, I think, synthetics done well, but there's no doubt there is a lot of synthetics in here. I don't know if Amouage claims there's real oud in here or not. I don't know. If they do, go with it. But I've got a review on the channel off of a decant. I ended up buying a bottle because I loved it so much. I think they do say there's some real Assam oud in here. I don't know. But there's birch. It's very smoky and very leathery, and I love the castoreum. Castoreum can sometimes give off this warming, like imagine like how warm the beaver must be in all of its fur. You know, castoreum has that sort of warmth of being bundled up, but also it can come across as slightly metallic and very leathery and animalic. I mean, it can have a big animalic smell to some people. I love castoreum. It's my favorite animalic note, but here it's used with kayak wood, which can give off a little bit of that kind of barbecue wood-like feel, but I do love this stuff, I must admit. I think this and Royal Tobacco are the two strongest releases under the Fishman, and if I was going to buy another Amouage under the Fishman, under the oppressive regime of the Fishman, I would buy Royal Tobacco. That's full bottle to me, worthy to me. Okay, number 13, we go to the Tom Ford private blends. Again, only using the private blends, not the sort of designer line, and this is called Tuscan Leather. So of course Tuscan Leather is kind of known to everybody. Tuscan Leather is a huge leather, smoky leather, bad boy leather is what I call it. Like being in a bar, smoking a cigarette. You know, there's burn holes all over the couch and the pool table. You've got your old leather jacket on that hangs in the garage and soaks up the fumes from your car. But most people don't realize there's a big saffron note in here, which makes it raspberry, saffron, add a little bit of this Middle Eastern twist. You know, some people bring it up when they talk about things like the moon. And I mean, I don't see the comparison as much, but I could see why someone would look at the note listing and go, okay, raspberry, leather, saffron. Obviously, it's something to do with Tuscan leather. But Tuscan leather to me sits more as a leather fragrance, even though it has Middle Eastern touches. Something like the moon is strictly a Middle Eastern fragrance that just happens to have some leathery touches and fruity touches that mesh with something like this. But this set off a revelation. This is, I mean, another one that can be on your skin for, it feels like an entire day, until your next shower is how I'll call Tuscan leather. The longevity is off the charts. It's leathery, smoky, spicy. You know, thyme can give off a little bit of that leatheriness as well. They also say there's leather and black suede in here. I don't know, but I love the leather. Harry Fremont and Jacques Cavalier created Tuscan leather. And then one more Tom Ford here from the private blend. This is Amber Absolute. And you can see I've got about a half bottle on this one, half bottle or so. And this is one of the strongest ambers I've ever come across. Amber Absolute is a huge amber. Everything is kind of turned up. Everything is big. It's smoky. It's got frankincense. It's got a big labdanum note. I love the way Tom Ford does labdanum. I easily could have included Sahara Noir if I had a full bottle in this list. Although I think that was in the designer line now that I'm thinking about it. But I would love a bottle of Sahara Noir one day. Christophe Lademiel is the perfumer. One of my favorite ambers. Maybe one of the only ambers that could go head to head with Serge's amber. Ambre Sultan. So Ambre Sultan also could have been on the list. No Serges made the list, although obviously there could have been some Serges on the list. But I chose Arso over Filanagio. I chose Amber Absolute over Ambre Sultan. But easily there could have been some Serges on the list. There just didn't work out to have any. And I didn't want to make the list too long. Okay. So that's Amber Absolute, number 14. Number 15 is a fragrance that if you like Tom Ford's Tuscan leather, this is probably one of the stronger releases from Clive Christian, but some call this a clone. It is discontinued now in the Ostrich box, me lord, which everyone loves the Ostrich box. I mean, that is a pretty damn cool box, I'm not going to lie. And this is called Clive Christian C for men. Again, discontinued now, but it's almost, some people call this Tuscan leather intense as a joke because it really is, and you can see how much I've worn. I absolutely love this stuff. That is my dent. I've worn the piss out of this. 2010 this came out, a couple years after Tuscan leather. They obviously looked at Tuscan leather and went, damn, they're onto something, let's work off of that. And it feels like they used it as a springboard to create this. They claim that there is oud in here. They claim there's all kinds of stuff in here that's not in Tuscan leather. Costus, which can smell slightly sort of like wet fur, wet animal, you know, animal sleeping on a bed that hasn't been cleaned for a long time. And, you know, if you ever had a dog sleep on like a dog bed, if you don't wash it regularly, it starts to stink from the oils on their skin, getting on the bed and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that feel with Costus. Some waxy styrax. But at its heart, it really feels like Tuscan leather, maybe with a little bit of like mate tea on top or something. Small touches here and there, but it's even more intense than Tuscan leather, if that makes sense, which you wouldn't expect because Tuscan leather is so huge, but I actually think this is even bigger than Tuscan leather. Maybe it's the oud, I don't know what it is, but yeah, C for men definitely deserves to be on this niche, powerful list. And then we've got number 16, which is probably the biggest Dior I've ever smelled as far as like powerful, hardcore synthetics go. And this is called Leather Oud. So Leather Oud is kind of, I I would say, almost a little bit of a, you know, it's a little bit of a hero in Fragcom. A lot of people absolutely love Leather Oud, and I completely am on board with it. I am also a lover of Leather Oud. It's leathery, animalic. It has this pissy civet, which can have a little bit of this men's restroom feel with honey. The animalic honey gives a little throwback to the old days of Hugo Boss #1 and stuff like that, but with leather and oud and birch. And the birch makes it feel very smoky. There is some sandalwood, there's some clove, spices, cedar, patchouli, and vetiver, but I think this is the biggest sort of Dior. And the thing is I actually have a bottle before the C and the D came together, and I have one after. And to be honest, they smell identical to me. I can tell no difference. This is a 2015 bottle. Someone said, oh, the reformulation happened in 2013 or 12. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, you know, I chased this bottle down because I was thinking, oh, it's going to be different. It's not. To me, it's almost identical as the one, the newer one. Now, who knows how long they'll be selling this. Rumor is that this is not long for this world, but you know, if you are into the kind of hardcore, big, leathery, oudy fragrances that I like, you have to smell Leather Oud. And if you can't smell Leather Oud, or if you're not going to spend $300 or something like that on a bottle, and you want to get in the ballpark, I would urge you to try Jacques Bogart One Man Show Oud Edition. It's like a $15 fragrance. It'll get you in the ballpark of Leather Oud. So, but maybe that'll be in the designer video. Okay. Next on the list, number 17, this is Arabian Oud. I'm just considering Arabian Oud a niche house. I don't know where to put Arabian Oud, to be honest with you. Some of their fragrances are thousands of dollars. I think this one's pretty expensive, actually. I was looking it up. Arabian Oud Resala. So on the Arabian Oud website, Resala sells for $280. I'm guessing that's niche pricing to me. Like a decadent Arabic sweet. This is Resala, which is kind of a cool little, with the, almost like a pen. It's so unbelievably sweet, though. This deep, strong fragrance, powerful, seduces your senses with the arousing scent of dark chocolate, Madagascan vanilla, and Cambodian oud. The allure of this distinct fragrance compels the emotions of those savoring a sweet scent and conveys a lustrous mystique from the depth of oud. The complex of this elegant scent carries notes of saffron and rose that nuance the sultry sweet savors pronounced by its exotic aroma. The warmth of Resala persuades the olfactory with woody notes of oud blended harmoniously with the spiced sweet scent of refined sillage. The spiced sweet scent of refined sillage? Okay. So there you have it, Resala. It's a big rose oud chocolate vanilla. Really, it's a giant vanilla smell to me, but big oriental, cool bottle, but not my favorite. Actually, my least favorite Arabian Oud. That's supposed to be like the compliment getter, the beast mode compliment getter. You know exactly where I'm going with this. Smells like it could be in a $10 Lattafa bottle, but it's $280 kind of thing. Okay, so next on the list we have a Papillon. The only Papillon on the list, I think probably the strongest, is why it's on the most powerful list. But this is called Anubis, and probably my favorite Papillon as well. I reviewed it on the channel. One of my favorite suede. Oh God, just smelling that, man. Wow, in the heat, the Egyptian jasmine comes out a little bit more in, but you get this labdanum resinous suede. We talked about Immortelle and Pink Lotus in my review, and saffron, frankincense. You're getting the idea of the type of fragrances that come across as extremely powerful in beast mode. But I love Anubis. I did a review, a very intellectual review on Anubis. You can go check that out. I'm a huge fan of Liz Moore's work, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about her new work, Epona, which is a leather. So, good times. Okay, that was number 18. Number 19 is a fragrance from the house of Biehl Parfumkunstwerke, which I believe means perfume works of art in German. and Biehl is the name. And you know what's interesting is the idea with this house, wow, is that he wanted to create a fragrance line that was actually very similar to what Frederic Malle did, to allow the perfumers to almost be editors of their own kind of scent, if you will, and have freedom and all that stuff. And it's an interesting house that never got the love Frederic Malle got, but this is a spicy, leathery throwback scent. So we're going to do, excuse me, a powerful fragrance videos targeted to vintage fragrances, right? And you're going to see the hardcore, you know, powerhouse fragrances of the past, let's say. This imitates some of those hardcore Jill Sanders fragrances, the way that it wears, but it's a huge, spicy, leathery chypre is what it smells like. There's mint and lavender and peach and pineapple and gardenia leaf and petitgrain and bergamot in the top and lime. And then it dries down to carnation, iris, vermouth, geranium, rose, star anise, tarragon, one of my secret ingredients, lily of the valley, orchid, rosemary, nutmeg, leather, castoreum, cedarwood, ambergris, white musk, frankincense, labdanum, patchouli, vetiver, and oak moss. It is such a breath of fresh air to smell something like this in the niche world. To be fair, it came out in 2011, but still, the fact that they did something like this, hats off to them. I'd love to smell more from the house. Arturetto Landi is the perfumer. Hell of a name, by the way. Biehl AL03 is the name of this fragrance, sorry. AL03. The names are a little bit weird, but the juice is very, very good. Okay, next on the list we have 3 MFK fragrances. MFK is known for his plasticky, harsh kind of creations. He loves using these big amber woody-like materials. The first one is from 2010, and it's a discontinued fragrance, unfortunately, but it is Absolue pour le Soir. I've got like an early impression video on this, which I was not kind to it, but this is a big sort of pissy amber is what this is. It's a pissy amber, and it is cumin, Bulgarian rose, honey, benzoin from Siam, frankincense, smoke, and sandalwood. But it wears like it starts off like a plasticky, like burnt plastic. It's very, very strange, but it's ended up growing on me. I like the animalic pissy aspect of it. I think it's one of my favorite MFK fragrances, and I will review it one of these days very soon. Who knows? Maybe I'll have the balls to wear that in summer even. We'll see. But that's Absolue pour le Soir at number, again, unranked list, just going in order, number 19. Number 20 is a fragrance from the same house, MFK. And this one came out in 2012, so we're talking a couple years later, and this is his original Oud Eau de Parfum, which I actually really like. But I'll tell you what, this is one of the most tenacious fragrances I've ever smelled. One day, when I wore it as my scent of the day, I sprayed it right here on my desk, and there was like a book, or actually it was a notepad, okay? And literally for months after that, I would be wearing a fragrance sitting here. Like I just applied a fragrance. And because it got on the paper on the notepad, I smelled MFK's Oud over my fragrance, which I just applied. It is insane how strong this stuff is. Saffron, Laotian Oud, Philippine Elemi, Atlas Cedar, and Singapore Patchouli. I mean, like one spray. This is like a one spray fragrance. It's crazy. It's like, you've heard the term one hitter quitter. This is like one spray quitter fragrance. It's crazy. So MFK's Oud. Number 21 is the final MFK on the list. This is Ciel de Gemme. And Ciel de Gemme is a discontinued fragrance that they tried to bring back in a different form. And apparently it wasn't all that. Rich Mitch has a comparison video on the channel. You can check it out. But Ciel de Gemme is one of my favorite amber fragrances. I love the way the amber part of the fragrance plays with the jasmine in here. It's a beautiful floral, spicy, with balls, you know? Even though it's jasmine and amber, it smells beautiful on a man strong enough to wear this. Absolutely stunning stuff. So shout out to my brother Hari for making this happen. You can see his bottle, his name on it, but he gave me a very, very fair price on that. Actually, I think that was a gift. So yes, number 21. Number 22, that was number 22. Number 23 is Comme des Garçons only Comme des Garçons on the list, and it is called Two Man. Now, Two Man will remind some of Gucci Pour Homme from 2003, which I reviewed on the channel, so you can check that out. But Two Man is Mark Buxton's take on the DNA, and he's added some heavier woods in here. Like, for example, there's like a mahogany sequoia wood thing going on, I believe, from memory. But at the top, you get curly mint and kumquat, which you don't get very much kumquat in perfume. And I don't know how I feel about kumquat in perfumery, but the smoke and the frankincense and the way it leans into that woody, almost like a log cabin-like feel, but it's leathery and oh, it's just beautiful. And it's a powerful beast. Comme des Garçons is known for making strong but synthetic smelling fragrances. You know, they're known for doing weird synthetic like things. And you know what? I like their aesthetic. I need to smell more. I haven't smelled enough Comme des Garçons, to be honest with you, but I really like that woody, spicy, smoky, earthy, resinous type perfume. Okay, number 24, we have Beaufort. And Beaufort, you could basically take any Beaufort fragrance. I've reviewed Rake and Ruin. That could be on the list. Tonnerre, I've shown on other videos. That could be on the list. But I picked my favorite Beaufort, and this is Iron Duke. And Iron Duke I describe as literally like being in a battle. It's so insane, and it's so huge. I mean, there's a note. The only thing that's missing is the blood. But you find that in Tonnerre, but if you want to take that step. But I much prefer this. It's tobacco, liqueur, metallic notes, like you're literally in a tank. Cambodian oud, star anise, soap. You know, like you can smell the cheap army soap the guy next to you used. Animalic notes, charred notes, like you fired your shell from your tank and it burned the tree down over there and it's on fire, and you can smell these charred sort of resins wafting, woody wafts into the air, and you're inside this tank. The guy next to you is nervous he's going to die. He's sitting there drinking this whiskey straight while shaking like a leaf and smoking a cigarette, and you can smell all of this, and you're the tank commander. There's just so much going on. It's such an artistic fragrance. I love perfume like this that tells a story. You know, this tells a story. This starts somewhere, this ends somewhere, and in between there's all of, and this is a strong, powerful. I mean, you really have to decide where to wear this. Very leathery, very spicy, and I think it gives off vibes because of how oily some of the, and there's a gunpowder note in here, by the way. Hay, tobacco, but the way that tobacco and hay and gunpowder all mixed together remind me a little bit of Royal Tobacco by Amouage. It's the reason I never personally bought a bottle. Maybe one day a bottle will find its way to me, but right now Iron Duke is kind of scratching that itch. Very leathery and spicy. And that only leaves one, number 25. Which again, this is unranked, but I did save one of my favorites for last, and I'm very sad at how little juice I have left, but this is the one and only Diaghilev by Roja Parfums. I absolutely adore Diaghilev. It's one of my favorite fragrances of all time. I think it's a masterpiece. It's a big, what Roja calls a Baroque chypre, like a huge, giant chypre. Even from the freaking cap, you don't even have to spray it. Forget about spraying it. You can just take the cap off and smell the damn thing, and you're just like blown away. I mean, I will smell this in my nostrils for hours just from smelling it from the cap. It's like the little droplets escape and go up your nostril when you smell it and just live there, and you continue to smell Diaghilev. It's so unbelievably strong. Very spicy, lots of tarragon, which give that anisic-like feel, like a green anisic-like feel. And it's a chypre. I mean, it has the fruit. It's got peach. It's got blackcurrant bud. It's got all these different beautiful flowers, tuberose, jasmine from grass, may rose, heliotrope, ylang violet. But it has this cumin, leathery, dirty civet, amber, real ambergris dry down with ambrette and iris. And it just has this posh, sexualized aspect. Very, very human feeling, like you've got your head buried in her neck, you know what I mean? And you can smell kind of her anticipation and the sweat on her body, and just, you know, her scent as a woman. It's like you can smell the person. It is, I think, an absolute masterpiece. I would love to know who made this. I know it says Roja's the perfumer. maybe he is the perfumer. There's a lot of rumors flying around. Sylvain Delacourt, who was at Guerlain when Roja was there, claims he was never a perfumer. He worked in like the makeup aisle or something. And that's from someone who worked with Roja Dove. And this is as a Roja Dove fan. I would just like to know, as a perfume fan, who the hell made this, okay? Like if Roja really all of a sudden turned into a master perfumer after all these years, kudos to him. But if another perfumer was working in the background like Pierre Bourdon was doing with Creed, I would like to know who made this. That's all. I would still even buy another bottle because I love this stuff so much. I would just like to know, who is it? Who the hell had the balls and temerity to make this? Who was it? But I mean, this stuff lasts on me all day. Even though I reapply because I love it so much, all day. This is an all-day fragrance. It is one of the most powerful fragrances in my collection. And yeah, so that's 25 powerful niche fragrances in my collection. There will be another part 2 and a part 3, probably a designer and a vintage list version of this. So thank you to my subscriber who made this video happen, basically, by recommending it. I do try to listen to my subscribers. Can't always promise to do it, but I do try. And I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate the interaction and the back and forth, and I love that. And I love all of you guys who are here. Subscribe, watch, comment, interact with me. It's like being around friends all day. It's fantastic. So let me know what your favorites are from the list. As always, cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.